Raising kids isn't for the faint of heart, and sometimes you need straight talk from people who get it. I'm Dr. Melissa Wellner, a child adolescent psychiatrist and mom of 3.
And I'm Samantha Straub, licensed clinical counselor, educator, parenting coach, and mom of 2. Together, we host Parenting Shrink Wrapped, the podcast where we tackle the joys, the meltdowns, and the downright absurdities of raising children and teens. You'll get practical strategies that actually work, plus some laughs and solidarity along the way.
So, if you've ever thought, I love my kid, but wow, this is hard, come join us on Parenting Shrink Wrapped. Find us wherever you listen to your podcast or on YouTube. Now back to our friends at Wellness Rebranded.
Welcome to Wellness Rebranded, the podcast for women ready to redesign their relationship with food, fitness, and feelings.
We are a registered dietitian, a personal trainer, and a mental health therapist. 3 experts, 1 mission.
To help you break free from diet culture, hustle culture, and emotional burnout. Let's redefine what wellness really means on your terms.
Hey, everyone. If this is your first time tuning in to this podcast, welcome. Welcome to Wellness Rebranded. We're so happy you're here. And today, Elizabeth and I are going to talk about those little or not so little sometimes lies that we tell ourselves, some thinking patterns that sometimes sneak in quietly or loudly to mess with our wellness journey. Elizabeth, hi. How are you?
Hi.
What's up?
I am well. We are making history here today, Maria, with this podcast because it's actually the first time that only you and I have recorded without Tara. Tara and I have recorded together. I think you and Tara have recorded together, but this magic combination has not happened, just you and me.
That is right. Be ready to fall in love.
Tara,
having a one-on-one with me.
Tara will find herself not on the pod anymore. Just we already miss her.
We miss you, Tara. FYI.
Exactly. So I wonder what thoughts of Tara listening to us are.
So listen, I love this conversation because we've said it here before, right? Like thoughts have a great impact on how we feel and how we behave. I've said it before, like if we define human beings from a mental health standpoint, it's like a triangle and it's thoughts, feelings, and actions.
Yeah.
So thoughts is huge. And many of you might have read out there when it says, don't believe everything you think.
Yeah, thoughts aren't facts.
Right, thoughts aren't facts, and sometimes our thinking patterns lie to us. So this is a really good conversation to talk about what do we really mean when we say that and why it's important to talk about it and what's the impact that can have on our wellness journey.
Yeah, I'm super excited to chat with you about this because honestly, it comes up all the time in the intuitive journey and healing your relationship with food, right? Because we have these deeply held belief patterns and thoughts that there's so much unlearning in the journey away from diet culture and then relearning. And a lot of it really is about our thoughts and our beliefs about food and our bodies. And then just more broadly, even if someone, isn't necessarily working on healing their relationship with food, we still have limiting beliefs and thought patterns and cognitive distortions that keep us stuck in unhelpful patterns, right? And to build new habits, new patterns, we need to understand what those are and reframe them. So it comes up all the time for me in my work. I'm sure it does for you as well.
Yes. And not only, sometimes keep us in unhealthy patterns, but also bring our self-esteem down. It brings our self-confidence down because sometimes, yes, we can tell things to ourselves that, again, are not based on evidence or reality, the truth. So
yeah, but then they almost become self-fulfilling prophecies, right? When
exactly.
we believe them and we expect them and then they happen and then we're like, oh, see, I knew, blah, blah, blah.
Yes. So if somebody's out there like, what are these two talking about? Like exactly what is that?
I have an example of one that I think people might relate to who are listening. So in intuitive eating, there's this thing. So we work really hard to get rid of food rules, right? All those rules from diet culture and kind of this rigid and restrictive thinking. And there's this eating style called What the Hell Eating Style. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like a really good example of how important our thoughts are. So if I'm on a diet, right, or even
Mm-hmm.
just have a specific meal plan or these rigid set of rules that I'm trying to follow, and I wake up today and I'm like, okay, today, like I'm cutting out the carbs and I'm cutting out the sugar and I'm only eating X calories and I'm doing all the things, right? And then I walk into the office and the first thing I see, somebody's brought in a lot of bagels and cream cheese and they look delicious. And maybe, I did or didn't have enough to eat for breakfast, so I'm hungry and then I eat one, right? And my next immediate thought is like, oh my gosh, I already blew the whole day, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I already messed up the whole plan. So what the hell? I'll just eat, enjoy all the things today and I'll worry about getting back on track tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And we call that what the hell style eating in intuitive eating. And it really stems from this kind of very black and white thinking
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
about, and it's an example of how our thoughts, right? I believed that I wasn't supposed to, or I was going to, or not supposed to do all these things. Then as soon as I broke it, I felt terrible, defeated, right? Like a
Mm-hmm.
failure. And then the next behavior or action is like, oh, screw it. Now it doesn't matter. So I'll worry about it tomorrow. And a lot of people probably recognize that it can happen over and over again, the cycle. And it all stems from your thoughts.
Yes. So it's what formally is called the all or nothing thinking. You're is either or, is like you said, black or white. I'm thinking, for example, in another example to help bring clarity about how this can show up is, for example, if you have a neighbor or a coworker that you really like, you have a good relationship, and then one day you go to the refrigerator where everybody puts their lunch and you realize that that coworker ate your sandwich, for example, and now you're like, I don't like this person anymore. Like now this person is a bad person for something they did. So we go to those extremes, right? About this is, I don't like this person. Like now this is a bad person. There's no gray areas. Now this person is a bad person and that's it. Or let's say that you got a B on a test and you, oh, before that it's been just A's, right? So you now you feel like you have failed at being a good student, even though you have A's before that, but that B takes you to that extreme, like, okay, now I'm a failure, I'm a bad student. So is that on lack of flexibility in thinking?
Yeah, I think of that as like absolutist thinking too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like only seeing things in the super rigid or the extreme. There's like only kind of one right way to do it. And I usually tell people, or I don't know, I'm curious what you would think, but to me, like if you start hearing words like I ought to, should, supposed to, must, like those are usually kind of clues, right?
Yeah.
Like I have to, I ought to work out hard at the gym, or what's even the point in going, or, I need to cook all my meals from scratch, or I'm not eating healthy.
And this is important to mention that these thoughts happen automatic. Like we're not planning to have these thoughts. We don't wake up one day and say, today I'm going to think, I'm going to have an all or nothing kind of thing. They don't ask me why, if we're born with them. I mean, we could ask somebody else, but what I want to say is that they happen automatic. We have no control when they come. That's why it's so important to recognize them and learn what they are so you can stop them on the tracks and say, okay, this is happening. Let me reframe this thinking process.
Yeah, I was going to say, not only are they automatic, but most of the time, I don't think we realize we're doing them. They
Right.
feel like kind of typical, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that is an important point. I'm also thinking about catastrophizing or catastrophic thinking, like focusing on the worst possible outcome.
Yes. Yes.
I ate that chocolate cake and now I'm never going to reach my goal. Or if I don't lose weight, I'll never find a partner.
Yes, and this is a common one as well. It's like when if one thing goes wrong, then everything will collapse,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you make one mistake at work, I'm going to get fired. Or if I eat this, I'll gain all the weight back, or I'll mess my whole routine. If I take a break, I'll lose all my progress. Is that one thing is going to ruin it all?
Brains are tricky, right?
Brains are tricky because the more we repeat something, the more powerful it becomes stronger. So then these thoughts are going to show up even more. That's why it's so important to recognize them and learn that we're doing them, bring that awareness so we don't make them as strong, because we go through life with this kind of thinking pattern, right? So the earlier we recognize them, the weaker we can make them and fight them.
Do you ever feel stuck in the same exhausting cycle with food? Second guessing every bite, starting over each Monday, or wondering why willpower never seems to work? This is Elizabeth, and I created my intuitive eating starter kit to help you break free from that cycle. Inside, you'll get all sorts of tools to help you learn how to quiet food guilt, understand your hunger and fullness cues, and finally start building a peaceful, sustainable relationship with food. It's normally $29, but because you're a loyal Wellness Rebranded listener, you can grab it today for just $14. Head to elizabethharrisnutrition.com/starter kit and use code PODCAST, all in caps, at checkout. That's elizabethharrisnutrition.com/starter kit, code PODCAST in all caps.
Yeah. I think that recognition piece can be so difficult, but also it's the first step, right? If you're not aware you're doing it, you can't change it.
Correct. So we've talked about two ones so far, right? The all or nothing, and then the catastrophizing. Those are two very common ones. I'm also thinking about when we discount the positive. Formally, it can be called filtering, which is basically sometimes it's way easier to see the negative things that are happening and discounting the good things that are happening too. So we focus on the negative and then the situation sucks, right? All we're seeing is what's going wrong.
Oh my gosh, I just did this in my journaling this morning. I was sort of like, I'm doing this really cool journaling exercise, which is a different sort of story, but I found myself kind of like stuck in a loop of like focused on the negative, and then I literally had to intentionally stop and be like, okay, but like here's all the positives and the light and the growth and the healing and all the things. And yeah, literally just found myself doing that very thing this morning.
You know, when we do it a lot, and I have this conversation with the women I work with, is when we receive compliments. How many times somebody says like, "Hey, Elizabeth, I love your glasses," right? And you're like, "Well, yeah, I just got them. They're not that nice, actually. It's like okay, like you need to discount the compliment." Or if somebody says, "Oh, you did a great job out there on your speech or on your presentation." "Oh, well, I just made a couple of mistakes, but thank you."
Yeah,
How
it's like it
hard.
feels self-deprecating, but you're right, it is kind of discounting.
It is discounting the positive. So how it's interesting how difficult it could be to say, "Oh, yes, thank you." Or
Yeah.
"I know, yeah, I did a great job. I feel it too. Thank you." I don't know if it also comes from the belief, and I don't even know if this, I would say that even usually happens more with women too,
I
that
was
we
thinking
have
that.
to be super humble. And if we say, "I know, I did a great job," right? Then I don't know, what's the word? Like
Or that it's somehow impolite to if you
yeah.
do it. And I'm thinking so clearly of my husband in this moment because he would totally be like, "Yeah, I crushed that." And I would never do that.
Why not? You see, it's not fair. We need to
Yeah.
start owning our amazingness and embracing it. And if somebody says, "Maria, you look so pretty today," "Oh, thank you. I felt it too." Or
Yeah.
just thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
But this is maybe not related to cognitive distortions, but a little bit of what we're talking about. I was at the grocery store with my 15-year-old, and we were chatting, and then this woman walks by with a little puppy. So we're like, oh, the puppy starts making conversation. So the woman, of course, hears my accent, and she's like, where are you from? And I'm like, oh, I'm from Venezuela. Oh, I speak a little bit of Spanish. And then she asks my daughter, do you speak Spanish too? And my daughter says, just a little bit. And then we kept talking. Okay, bye to the puppy, bye to the woman, very nice lady. And then my daughter says, Mom, I only said a little bit because I didn't want to sound, like too much. Like I wanted to be humble. And I'm like,
Yeah.
sweetie pie, take a
Yeah.
deep breath and listen to what I'm going to tell you right now. You do not have to do that. It
Yeah.
is okay to say, yes, I speak perfect
Yes, I'm
Spanish.
bilingual.
Yeah. So I was like, wow, where does this come from that we need to minimize the good things to not make others uncomfortable, or to present ourselves as less as what we really like? Where does that come from and why? So I was like, no, you speak Spanish well, and it's okay to say it and to own it, and that doesn't make you a a bad woman, or not humble, or not kind.
Right. Yeah. It's a little bit different, but sort of related. I'm thinking about almost most of the time, I should say. My first question to my clients in a session is like, tell me what went well for you over the
Uh-huh.
last weeks. And you might be surprised how often people they'll say like one tiny thing and then immediately go into the like all the things that didn't go well.
Yeah.
And I'm always trying to redirect, like, okay, I promise we're gonna get to that, but like I know more things went well for you, so like let's talk about them. Or well, I feel like we tend to discount what went right because we're so focused on what went wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And one of my favorite things to do in a session with clients is like teach people the stages of change so that I can show them, like, okay, but even if you didn't like do the thing, like, look at how you already moved from like this stage to this stage. And that's the work. Like, it is happening, even though it doesn't maybe look the way you expect it to look right now.
Yes. Yes. And yes. So important. And maybe it comes from feeling uncomfortable. Where does that feeling of if it's positive, then it feels or that we cannot connect with other people through the positive things that happen to us, right? Maybe because we get a little more attention when bad things happen, and it reinforces to keep talking about negative things, so we feel that we connect more that way. I'm not sure, but please, let's be mindful of that and aware that it doesn't have to be that way. And it does, because here's the thing, Elizabeth, the more we practice is not the word, but the more we go with these patterns of thinking and the more we do these things, the bigger the impact it has on our mental health. And I'm talking about a negative impact because, like I
Mhm.
said at the beginning, it makes you focus on the negative, and that has an impact on your well-being and the way you feel. Because if thoughts have a huge impact on how you feel and how you behave, then if it's based on just looking at the negative, that's how you're going to feel and therefore how you're going to behave. So it's really important for that cycle to, for us to be aware of that cycle and break it as much as we can.
Yeah, totally agree. What other types of cognitive distortions do you see or think we should mention?
Well, I think another one that is common is when we do what it's called labeling. Like if you make a mistake and now you're a failure, that's something that we're really good at, or most of us, is to calling ourselves names or making conclusions about ourselves for something, maybe even small. I always say on social media, everybody's talking about like, oh, toxic people, toxic people. I'm like, hold on 1 minute, because not everybody's completely toxic. A human being is not 100% bad or 100% good. Good people can do bad things, and bad people can do good things. But
Mhm.
we're quick at labeling others or labeling ourselves. And then we get into thoughts like just not strong enough to handle this, or I'm bad with food, I'm bad with choosing what's the best for me, or I'm not an athlete, so I'll never be fit, or I don't like going to the gym, so I'll never, improve my flexibility. Whatever that is, we label ourselves, and that's limiting.
I think we tend to do it so much in the body image space too. Think about all the ways we label our bodies
Mm.
and the mean things we say to ourselves. Just that inner critic can get so loud, and
Yeah.
usually that does come from the labeling space.
Ah,
Like, I'm so gross, I can't believe I ate that, or
yeah.
my body is whatever. And, we've talked about it so many times on the podcast, but like, why are we doing that to ourselves? We're like, we say things to ourselves that we would never say to like people we don't even
Hmm. Yeah.
like. And
Yeah.
yet we talk to ourselves that way.
And I think it's a dance that we learned to do very well since we were little, and society does it like we all do it. So it kind of becomes the norm. I'm thinking of
Mhm.
labeling also. Something that really obviously touches my heart is the labeling around mental health conditions. If somebody, there's that
Mhm.
belief out there that if you are diagnosed with depression, let's say, or with an anxiety disorder, it's like, okay, now you label yourself as, let's say, disabled in all areas of your life, and how you cannot be able to do so many things. And that is also not based in reality, because mental health, the health of your mind and your emotions, do not depend on a condition. There are many people out there that have not been diagnosed with a mental health condition or disorder, and they do not have good mental health. And there are people out there that have been diagnosed with a mental health disorder and have great mental health, because it all comes to how you take care of yourself, how you function, the resources that you bring to you, how you help yourself in different areas of what you've learned, what you practice, not necessarily on the diagnosis or the lack of a diagnosis. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I'm also thinking about how I think we start doing it from the time we're young in like our family dynamics, right? Of like, oh, I'm the shy one, or I'm the funny one, or I'm the whatever one, right? And then we kind of like internalize those and take them, whether we put those labels on ourselves or someone else put them on us, but we adopt them, right? And then they kind of stick with us, and they're not even necessarily true
Yeah.
or helpful. Which reminds me, so I'd love to know how you go about sort of shifting the patterns. I think obviously becoming aware of it is a huge first step, which is why this was such an important conversation to have, I think. But I always teach people to ask three questions as you're like as you become aware of it, then to kind of reality test them with like, is it true? Is it kind? Or is it helpful?
Mm-hmm.
And if not, how can we reframe it or let it go, or um,
Mm-hmm.
change the pattern?
I love yes to all that. I've done with teenagers in group therapy. I've loved to, sometimes we play like we bring our thoughts to court, and you have like the defense lawyers and the other ones, and so we bring the thought to, we contrast the thought with evidence, because let's say a teenager says, I'm a failure because whatever this happens, or I'm a burden to my parents. And then you have the other teenagers like, wait a minute, but last week you said that your mom told you how much she loves you and you make her life so much better. And then the other one is like, but you're not a burden to us. So even if that, or let's say the teenager said, I'm a burden to the world, whatever. And then we start contrasting, and
Uh-huh.
it's great how you see the change, because it's like, oh wow, okay, yes, and this is things that you told us yourself that last week, blah blah blah. Yeah. So you
Right.
start
That sounds really
contrast.
powerful.
So with adults can work too. It's like, hold on one second, let's take that thought and let's take a deeper, a closer look of where that comes from really, and contrasted with evidence. Because if you suck at your job so much, how have you had that position for so long and you were
Yeah, how do you keep getting a paycheck?
Yes, and not only that, you were promoted, and then 2 weeks ago, you said how everybody came to you to congratulate you or to acknowledge how great you did at something, and then you start, and it's an exercise that then people can replicate at home by
Yeah.
yourself. Is stopping that thought and say, "Hold on 1 minute, Maria. Yes, you didn't do well at that presentation and you said two bad words," which by the way I do a lot, and I hate when bad words slip my mouth when I'm doing a
Do
presentation.
you? I thought that you found swearing in English fun, Maria.
It is not when I'm in a professional setting in a presentation, but they still come out without planning because I
They
get so
just fly out.
they they fly out.
That's why you're the spicy one, speaking of labeling.
They fly out because I get so passionate about what I'm saying that in my head, here's the thought. I believe it's going to have more impact if I use the bad word, which again is not based in reality.
It usually does when you do it.
Because sometimes it doesn't happen frequently, but sometimes I can see some people's faces like, "Oh, did she just throw the S word or the whatever, the F word, whatever." I sometimes, after a presentation like that, then I'm in the car. I'm like, "Maria, why? Why did you have to say a bad word? How many times do we need to practice to just say what you need to say without the need of the curse word?" I've had to learn through the years, Elizabeth, to be kind and say that does not discount the information that I shared. It's still information that comes from my over 20 years as a mental health therapist. I'm going to keep working on my curse words, get it? Or I'm just going to say, I say curse words. If I'm not the speaker, please don't hire me because curse words are going to come no matter what. I don't
Because
know.
they just fly out. Can't help them.
They have a life of their own and I cannot control them. I'm so sorry. Oh my
Funny.
goodness. But actually, that's not even true because I have controlled myself. Like I have done presentations like for churches, and that I can behave. So there's a switch that
Oh,
I can control, but it's loose. It's a loose switch. It looks like,
but
it
it's
looks like
so
a lot.
hard. Then I imagine you get in your car and just let them rip.
And here's the thing, it happens in Spanish too. Don't even believe, like, I love cursing in both languages. So it happens in both. But anyway, all this to say, when you recognize, okay, this is the thinking pattern where I start bringing myself down, overgeneralizing, which is another one that we forgot to mention, overgeneralizing that every time I use a curse word, it's bad, or that just because I use this curse word, discounting the positive and all the ones that we've talked about it, just because I use this curse word, then everybody lost respect for me and I'm a horrible presenter and a horrible mental health therapist. And we go to these places easily. But I've learned with what I know that I bring myself back and I say, no, that's a little dot on a whole world of dots, right? My curse words that came out, that cannot discount everything else that happened and that I shared. So it's a practice. It's really important to get into replacing those thought patterns with evidence and with reality, which is no, I'm not horrible because I said a little curse word here and there.
Right. And self-compassion, right? I feel like the self-compassion piece is, I feel like all roads always lead back to self-compassion,
Yeah.
it seems, but especially here in this conversation is like, okay, what's the kinder, more compassionate way that you can state whatever it is you're feeling? Like,
It
not
even
that.
happens with emotions. If you think about it, you know how many times I've heard, "Oh, this makes me so nervous or scared, so I'm not going to do it."
Mhm.
And then when you introduce the thought, the possible thought that, yes, I am scared and I am nervous and I can still do it scared and nervous,
Mhm.
right?
That's how I
So
feel about hiking, Maria. I Every time I hike, I think how funny it is that it's the thing that I love most in the world. And I so love being in the mountains and I so love being active. And also, I am scared out of my mind every time I go because I'm terrified, especially like out west and in the places like if I run into a bear or a mountain lion or a something like I will literally fall in a heap and crumble and die. And I every time I'm out there, I just think it's funny how like the thing that I love the most is also the thing that scares me the most. And I just do it anyway,
Yeah.
even though I'm scared. But I talk really loudly to try to scare off the bears.
You see, you found what to do. But in life, we perceive many things as those bears, and we anticipate those bears in so many areas of our lives that are not based in reality either. It's just ingrained in our brain because we're survival beings, right? And we learn to defend ourselves from these dangers. But then it comes to real life, and then traffic becomes the bear, or being
Yeah.
late becomes the bear, or a little constructive feedback that somebody gave you becomes the bear. And then we start avoiding and trying to escape from all these things that are going to come because life is how it is. And that's on my end exactly what mental health means, is how to deal with the real bear. In your case, talking loud, or maybe you bring pepper spray. I don't know what will they scare bears away. But in real life, the self-talk is one thing, and sometimes doing things, throwing yourself to do things the best you can, helps with those fears for those bears. That some again, I guess my point is that sometimes we create those bears ourselves with our
I was
thoughts.
just going to say, not only everything that you just said, but also out of the, I don't know, hundreds of times I've been hiking, do you know how many times I've seen an actual bear? Like maybe two or three. And so, like, the fears don't, most of the time, they truly are just a fear. They don't even happen. And, like, what a wonderful metaphor for life and cognitive distortions. And, like, dang, if we didn't even plan this beautiful analogy.
I know.
Just
Thank
happened.
you for your bear experience. But, I would love to ask our listeners, which distortion shows up most in your journey, and how can you start challenging it if you're not doing it already? So I would love to invite people to send to message us or leave a comment on our Instagram, or contact us to let us know, yeah, which one shows up. And ask yourself right now, which of these show up more frequently for me, and how is a way that I can become that judge and contrast these thoughts of mine with evidence to really bring a little more reality into this 24 thinking, because we think all the time
Yeah.
in my brain.
I love that question. I was going to ask the same one. And I also just want to put out there a shameless plug. If you are recognizing a lot of these thoughts in your relationship with food and your body, there is a whole hour-long masterclass in my intuitive eating starter kit that's about challenging your inner food bully. And it would be a great place to kind of do a deeper dive and get some actual reframes and be able to help recognize the thinking. Plus, you'll get some pretty other cool tools in that starter kit. So I'll make sure we drop the link, but I wanted to offer that.
I love that. And yes, so look out there. What are cognitive distortions? So if you want to read more, and even ways to, again, contrast this with evidence and make our thinking, stop it in the tracks and be in charge of the way we think, because you do have that control. You don't have control when these thoughts come because, again, they happen automatic, but you do have control as to how much you welcome them and what happens when they come in. If you let them stay, if you refrain them, if you talk to them and change them, if you tell them, not right now, thank you very much, come back later, kind of talk with your thoughts, that you have control over. And it's a practice, and it's doable, and it can help with your
Yeah.
wellness
And
journey.
remembering, just because you think it doesn't make it true, that would be kind of where I would leave people.
Yes. Thank you for listening. Again, if this episode was helpful to you, please share it. We want to share the good information with everyone, free good info. with everyone. Leave a review, leave a like, download our episode, connect with us on Instagram at Wellness Rebranded, and connect with you on our next episode.
Thank you for listening. If you want to connect with me outside of this podcast, you can find me on Instagram at coaching_therapist.
I'm Elizabeth. You can find me at Elizabeth Harris Nutrition or in my Facebook group, Health and Healing with Intuitive Eating.
And I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Tara De Leon Fitness. Guys, if you loved this episode or any of our other episodes, we would love it if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcast. It really, really helps us get the non-diet word out to the rest of the world. So please leave us a review.
Yes, thank you.